Welcome to Strategy and Tragedy, the UK's top 20 business show. If this is your first time here, then welcome. You are in the right place, either as a first-time founder or a budding entrepreneur. And if you are tuning back in, then a very warm welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. And I'm so happy to interview my next guest, Lauren Currie, who is the 6-time serial entrepreneur, founder of UPFRONT, on a mission to upskill 10 million women when it comes to their confidence. Previously chairperson of Pregnant and Screwed, now newly published children's book author. Lauren, I have to check my notes because the list just goes on and on. She was awarded an OBE for her services in design and diversity. Her work has been featured in The Guardian, Design Week and Creative Review. The accolades just go on and on and on. Lauren, an absolute pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for coming on Strategy and Tragedy.
I'm so happy to be here, Steph. Thank you for inviting me.
And I'm so happy that we are so well coordinated. We need to dive in properly to your story because there's so many things I want to talk to you about. So my more loyal listeners will know that I usually end my conversations with my traditional closing question. I'm going to bring it up front and say, look at what I did.
Front and Centre, which is the name of our conference.
Front and Centre. Oh, is there some psychological manipulation there? Bringing it up front and centre for this interview. Lauren, what is one tragedy that's taught you an unforgettable lesson?
So there is a tragedy that almost, I feel like it follows me around every day, that motivates me to do the work that I do. Mm-hmm. And when I think about the world that I want to live in, the world that I want my son and his children to live in, I think we're all on the same page. There's a lot of change that needs to happen, particularly in terms of equity and equality. And the tragedy that breaks my heart every day is I believe that part of how we create that world is through art and business and creativity. It's through people having an idea and putting that idea into the world, whether that is a business idea, a product line, a fashion brand, an invention, a piece of technology, a song, a novel. And the tragedy is that the women who are having those ideas are so consumed with the belief that their ideas are not good enough, that those ideas never see the light of day. And so all of the creativity and the economic power that we need to create the change that we need to see in the world doesn't happen because women are so convinced their ideas aren't good enough. And to me, that is a tragedy that breaks my heart, and why I'm motivated to do work and keep showing up in the world every day to build products and services that show women and teach women that their ideas are good enough exactly as they are. And these are the steps you need to take to execute upon those ideas.
Yeah, what's that saying? To have the confidence of a mediocre white man. Right. So lovely segue into UPFRONT. But before we talk about your current business number 6, I want to stick with this for a second. Does this tragedy have its roots in something more personal to you? Like, why this in particular? Did something happen that's broken your heart around this? Why this one in particular?
Well, I think when I look back on the businesses that I've built and the work that I've done, all of my work has always been in and around social change and trying to make the world a better place.
Right.
You know, my first business was a service design consultancy. We were one of the very first in the UK to be offering service design consultancy focused on the public sector. So how do we make the NHS be more human-centred? How do we make education services be more human-centred? I built a product to make it easier for local communities to talk to their local police force before we had social media. I've worked in the health space, maternity rights space, and the red thread that goes through it all is women's lack of confidence hindering their growth, their community's growth, and ultimately growth that benefits everybody. Because confidence is a catalyst for change. It's a catalyst for leadership. It's a catalyst for difficult conversations. It's a catalyst for business building. It's the spark that creates all of these things that have consequences of monumental impact. Sure. And so that is why I decided to focus on confidence, because it is the red thread that I see that runs through all those spaces.
So it's more of a macro observation across all of these different points in the pattern as opposed to like one specific
Yes,
then
and it's also a pattern that I see in my own life and in my mum's life, my girlfriends' lives, the women that I'm close to, my peers. I am still very much on a confidence journey. I always will be. I always have to caveat things when I deliver keynotes and give lectures to say, please don't put me on a pedestal as I've solved the confidence conundrum, because it can't be solved. You can't graduate confidence. It's not a thing that you're ever finished with. And that can be frustrating and I think a bit exhausting to think about. But I think it's also quite liberating to understand that it's a lifelong journey. And as you grow, your confidence challenges just change shape. It's like you don't ever get to a place where there aren't any, but you do get to a place where you are really well equipped with tools and strategies and mindset principles that make it you can keep going and keep growing.
Hey gang, super quick interruption, but I promise it's worth it. I want to tell you really quickly about One Day. It's an 18-month MBA program, but get this, you literally start and scale your business for real alongside it. I am a mentor on the program. If you've been following this show for a while, then you may have picked up on the fact that I work there as well. That's one of my other jobs, and I absolutely love it. I've been with the business now for 2 years, probably a little bit more by the time you're listening to this, and that's why I can say with utmost conviction, from being on the inside track, how good this program is. So you've got the curriculum, the content, the learnings, the resources, the frameworks that add the structure to the chaos and the mess and give you that much needed direction on how you can move the needle week on week on week and get closer to your entrepreneurial goals. Beyond the actual content and curriculum, you've got one-to-one mentorship. So with myself, for example, and then best of all, I would argue the community. You get access to other entrepreneurs that are on the same journey that you are, because entrepreneurship is tough. And so being surrounded by other people that are on the same journey, who can pick you up when you're down and can also be helpful in terms of sharing other learnings, resources. Honestly, I cannot talk any more highly about this program. I'm going to drop the link in the show notes. Check it out if you're a first-time founder, if you're considering making that leap into entrepreneurship, or maybe if you tried something before and it didn't quite work out, or you realized actually this whole entrepreneurship game is a lot harder than you expected. One Day is the place for you. The frameworks, the guidance, the support, both practically, emotionally, is just second to none. So check it out. Let me know what you think. Now let's get back into the episode. It's interesting you mentioned about being put on a pedestal, because even for me, without even fully realizing it, I'm like, Lauren is queen of confidence. Even on the way here, I wasn't even listening to the song, but knowing I was on my way to come and interview you, Lauren, the song that I just had going around in my head, do you want to guess?
Yeah.
Demi Lovato, confident. What's wrong? And it's still going around in my head, right? What's wrong with being confident?
Yeah.
I wasn't even listening to it, but just with you in my mind. And so with that expectation, that pressure, that putting you on the pedestal, it's like, okay, queen of confidence, Lauren Currie. Of course, you're still human. There must have been so many times your confidence has been knocked. Are there any that you want to share, and specifically how you picked yourself back up again?
I mean, there's constant moments where my confidence is knocked. And I think how I always frame it in my mind is that my expertise and my superpower is entrepreneurship and building community. And it just so happens that I've focused on confidence as the theme for this business and these communities that I'm building. The moments where my confidence is knocked sometimes come fast and heavy. And I am in a place now where I have such a depth of understanding of how confidence works, where it comes from, how you cultivate it in yourself and other people, that those moments don't affect me the way that they used to. For example, being on stage and your tech not working. And I'll tell you a story that happened last Wednesday. I was delivering a live class. 1,032 people had signed up to come along. There were 642 women in the room. And we're on Zoom in an online learning space, which I'm sure lots of you will be familiar with. And I was about 10 minutes in. I was still in the introduction, and a woman's microphone was off, whether this was intentional or not. And she shouted so clearly, every single person heard her, "I'm not listening to this anymore." and I just said, "Okay, bye." And then kept going and didn't really think about it. But afterwards, my team were like, And they were like, you did not even miss a beat.
Didn't falter.
And later, one of the participants wrote about it on LinkedIn to say that moment taught me everything I need to know about Upfront, about Lauren's teaching style, about what I'm going to learn in this bond.
Confidence in action.
And I felt proud of myself because that's not something that I could have rehearsed or engineered or practice. But my reaction in that moment was kind of, this is hilarious that's just happened.
Yeah.
Move on.
Exactly.
Whereas now I can take a moment and think about it. I can see that for others that could have been I need to defend myself. I need to over-explain. I need to ask her to send me feedback. So that was a very kind of tangible moment that happened recently. I think the bigger picture challenge that I'm working through at the moment is what academics call the likability penalty, which is this notion that the more successful a woman becomes, the more likely she is to be criticised, particularly by other women.
Did you hear of the Unlikable Women Summit?
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. Summit, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's something that I have experienced, continue to experience. And I often talk about this notion of tall poppy syndrome, which is how academics have studied and coined this phrase of when women stand tall above the parapet as a tall poppy, they are much more likely to be, the other people are going to try and cut them down. So much so that I have a tall poppy tattooed on me, which I got this time last year, because the work that I've been doing with myself is, rather than showing up from a place of what are they going to say and what are they going to think, it's showing up from a place of, I am a tall poppy. I have always been that. I've always been a tall poppy since I was 4 years old, and I always will be. It's part of how I see the world. It's part of my ambition and my creativity. And so I want to really own that and be proud of that, rather than trying to live a life where I'm trying to strategize and come up with plans on how I'm going to respond to these people who are trying to cut me down, because they will, and they will continue to do that, and that's okay, because my focus is on myself and the communities that I'm here to serve and the impact that I want to have in the world.
Yeah. So a lot of these are very relatable and sound a little bit easier said than done. Of course, if somebody says something that, nobody quite like, or, I feel like everyone's a bit of a people pleaser. We've all got at least some sort of people pleaser within us. So I'd love to dive into some of those strategies, because even listening to that hilarious remark on that Zoom call that you did, there's something that jumps out at me is just this kind of water off a duck's back, just this like move on next. But linking it back to this people pleaser is we are all social creatures, right? Like anthropologically, we've evolved from we're tribes. So that's where obviously if somebody doesn't like us, it can feel like death. It can feel existential. So I guess first of all, it's like, how do we overcome that people pleaser within us?
I think part of it is understanding where those feelings come from, and you've articulated part of where that comes from really well. Is, my partner studied evolution, so we have lots of interesting conversations about this, and that women are rewarded and encouraged to be nurturing and more aware of, is everyone in the group okay?
Right.
And we are more likely to prioritise being liked rather than respected. But what I think is really exciting is we have the consciousness and the intellect to be able to have this conversation and to choose differently. And one of our strap lines up front, which we have on badges and on tote bags, is, may our confidence upset them. And it's interesting because people who have been through the bond and people who are in the upfront community are like, yes, like they see that is part of this work, and they see that people not liking your new confidence is inevitable. Like, that is what will happen. But people who are new to upfront might come and say, oh, I don't want to upset anybody. Who's them? Who am I upsetting? Yeah. And so how I always encourage people to think about it is not your job to make other people feel comfortable. And there are ways that you can make other people feel comfortable without putting yourself down. So I think people see it as two choices, like everybody's going to be really upset, or I have to kind of downplay myself to make everybody feel comfortable. And that's just it's not the case. Because when I talk to women one-on-one about this, they'll say, but I don't want other people in the room to feel intimidated, and I want everybody in the room to feel comfortable, and I want everybody in the room to feel safe to speak up. And it's like, yes, you can do all of that whilst maintaining your own respect and your own boundaries and your own dignity, without making fun of yourself, without saying sorry all the time, without slipping in comments that you're unprepared, or you're not very smart, or you're late, or you're not wearing the right shoes, or whatever these stories look like. So I think it's something about understanding this is a systemic societal problem. It's not about you as an individual. And the more we have these conversations about tall poppy syndrome, about the likability penalty, you know, it's like, I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to create impact. I'm here to be respected. I'm here to be kind.
I definitely want to get into the systemic thing in just a sec, but riffing off what you just said there, personally in my experience, I've actually found, like, flipping it completely on its head, that by being more confident, maybe as a woman in particular, I make other people around me feel even more comfortable. I think especially as a leader, because you've got somebody that's clear direction, that's reliable. So it's that kind of, what about if being your most confident best self made everyone else around you feel even more comfortable, if that's what you're worried about?
And that is what the data tells us. That's what happens, right? So for every person who might feel jealous or intimidated or insecure, there will be 10 people who feel, wow, I could be that.
Exactly.
What would it look like if I emulated that person? And we know that when people feel more comfortable and secure, they're more likely to do good work, they're more likely to be happy. A really great example of what you've just shared is stand-up comedians. So if you imagine going to a stand-up comedy gig and the comedians, you know, mumbling, sweating, I mean, you just want to die. You're like, I need to get me out of here, because you're so embarrassed.
Feel it.
For the
Cringe.
person. Where if the person stands up, grabs the mic,
Right.
and instantly they're telling you, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine. You're fine. We're going to have a good time. And you're like, oh, she's got it. It's fine.
Because you're setting the tone.
Exactly.
People feel it. People feel that energy.
And it's the same at work. It's the same at home. It's the same in parenting. And it's not about being a perfect person who's always, I've got this. You know, it was like what happened in the webinar last week, what happened the week before when my tech failed on the stage. It's like, things go wrong. But you're okay. Nobody's dying. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
And you can just hold that moment and let everybody know that you're okay. And if you're okay, they'll be okay.
Do you encourage I know you call them bonders,
Yeah.
and again, we keep talking about it, so we will dive in a sec, gang, but do you talk about the zones of comfort and getting into that stretch zone?
Yes.
Is there any more on that? You can keep on pushing those boundaries and keep kind of coming out of your comfort zone to increase your confidence.
Absolutely. Confidence is a practice. So we talk about confidence as a practice of building new muscle, the same way you would build new muscle at the gym through a fitness regime. And that muscle only starts to stretch when you are outside your comfort zone. It's like you can't build confidence sitting at a desk behind a screen doing the things that you've always done. And it's not about putting yourself in positions that feel so scary, you know, you're thrown up the night before in sweating buckets. It's like, what's a healthy stretch? So maybe you're someone who goes to meetings and doesn't say very much. So you decide, okay, in the next week, I'm going to say something in every single meeting I'm in. And that something might be not super significant, but you're practicing the muscle of saying something, of letting your voice take up space in those rooms. Then the next week it might be, I don't even have a photograph on my LinkedIn profile, because what if Andy, that I had a crush on in nursery school, comes to find me on LinkedIn, which he might, he probably won't, but also he doesn't care. So let's get your photo on LinkedIn. So it's these, we call them micro reps. It's like, what are these micro moments of confidence that can really start to build a practice.
Love that. Love the micro reps. So I'm a mentor to MBA students in entrepreneurship, and they are first-time founders. It's the first time that they are like taking that leap. So it's very much kind of that stretch, not quite a micro rep, but a little bit more. And the amount of my students who I see hold themselves back, men and women, but from fear of don't even know what, right? Because we haven't even given ourselves the time, the opportunity to even think about it and talk about it. But when you do start to open it up a little bit, it is mind-blowing how much we stop ourselves from doing things because of other people. So your kind of funny example there of kind of like someone I had a crush on, if they see or whatever. Can you expand a bit more? Can you share any more kind of practical tips on overcoming other people's judgment, their perception? What will they think? Who are they anyway? I'd love to hear you talk a bit more about that.
So there's an amazing quote that I love from Dita Von Teese, and she says,
yeah, I know what you're going to say.
I can be the ripest, juiciest, most delicious peach in the world, and there will still be people who don't like peaches.
I think that's the clean version.
So I think that is a great mantra.
Yeah.
Because you can do the best work in the world in the way that is full of kindness and integrity, and there will still be people who don't like you, who don't like your work, who don't like what you stand for. That is just part of being a change maker in the world. The way that I think about it is this. There are lots of people who will have opinions on you, what you do, what you don't do, what you say and how you say it. You get to decide whose opinion matters to you. So for me, the opinion that matters most to me is my own. What do I think of how I showed up in this podcast today? So when I go to bed at night and when I do my weekly review next Friday of all the things I've done this week, I'll think to myself, how do I feel about how I showed up? About our conversation we had, about how I rehearsed, prepared, delivered. If I feel good about those things, that's the most important thing. Then I might think, okay, who else matters? So my partner's opinion matters, my son's opinion matters, and there's maybe a friend and then a couple of professional advisors that if they called me up and said, that really was not a good move, you shouldn't have said that, or I don't think this has landed well, I would say, tell me more.
Take it on board.
What do you think? Help me learn, help me improve. All of the other stuff is noise.
So on your own opinion mattering the most out of everyone, which is fantastic advice and completely agree with, what's coming up for me is honestly, both personally as well as some of these other incredible entrepreneurs that I mentor, how do you reconcile then another blocker to taking action and being more confident, being perfectionism? Because like, I'm never happy, you know, and I don't want to be okay because I don't want, maybe I need to join a bond or get some help, but I fear complacency so much. I'd rather, it's so difficult. I can see you're smiling and something's coming out there, but it's such a tightrope that I feel that I walk. I'm turning this into my therapy session now, but it's a tightrope between, almost in my mind, not even perfectionism, but like, you know, striving and wanting to do better, and that wasn't quite, and being nitpicky about certain things, versus that complacency and just like, I don't want to get too comfortable because I know myself, I know I could get too comfortable and it scares me. So I'd rather veer on this side of the tightrope. So how do you reconcile that your opinion is the one that matters the most, but when you're a bloody perfectionist that's never happy?
So have you ever been in a place where you've been complacent and comfortable and lost opportunities?
It's so rare that I give myself the opportunity to do that, that there isn't a lot of statistical.
The short answer.
The right answer is no.
What she means is no.
I'm so scared.
So far away from that place. Like, people who worry about that, what you've just described, that fear, it's like the question I always get asked is, I'm so scared of being arrogant. Terrified of somebody calling
that doesn't
me
worry me, actually. I feel like I could be the most arrogant woman and I'd be nowhere near a mediocre man.
People who are ruminating and obsessing over never being called arrogant.
Yeah.
So far away.
Right,
Arrogant
because they're so worried about
don't
it.
ever think about it. It never crosses their mind. People who are being complacent, who are not challenging themselves, don't have these thoughts, are not having this conversation.
Right.
So there's work for you to do around your identity. It's like you need to own and accept the lived reality of the type of person that you are. You are a person who does things. You are a doer. You are a creator. You push yourself outside your comfort zone. I don't know you super well, but I'm going to guess you always have been that type of person. That is not going to change.
And then the fit, we're going to put the spotlight back on you in a sec, but then this is where it's problematic.
Okay.
I hear you. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And this isn't the first time someone's tried to tell me this.
Yeah.
So I apologize. But my problem is because I'm so scared to allow that to happen that I'm like, well, the only reason I have been that type of person is because of those fears. You know, so it's integrated within that. You see what I mean?
So you think that's the reason you've had the success that you've had?
Partially.
Yeah, it's not.
Because I don't know, right? Because I've always been too scared.
We do know.
Okay.
You know that we do know that you are driven. If you were to do a really deep dive into what you're driven by in your values, why you do your work, what motivates you to do your work, that is not driven by what if one day I become lazy. You know, you're driven by impact, you're driven by creativity, relationships, financial success, impact, all these things.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like, it reminds me of conversations I have with artists in the bond who'll kind of say they think that their success is because they've struggled so much. Like, that's why I've had the success. Or you meet corporate women in the bond who are like, the reason they've had their success is because they've burnt out so many times. And so you're attaching...
that's the price to pay.
Yeah, it's like, I wouldn't have got this good stuff without that bad stuff. And so the thing we need to unlearn, which is all of the work we do in the bond, is about unlearning, much more than it is learning new things. We have to unlearn this idea that to create something really powerful and useful in the world, there needs to be some sort of pain and negativity attached to that.
Yeah, and you know what that ties into is deservedness. Is to feel like you deserve it. I've had these, like I have this promotion, this gig, and then that ties into the confidence because you're lacking the confidence to own and be okay with that role, with that creative success, whatever it is. So it's almost like the pain, the burnout, the struggling, the suffering is the price to pay to help you collect enough evidence that you deserve it. It's like this internal narrative, right? And
the other way you can think about it is, okay, let's say your theory's real. So let's say in 6 months you're going to be, I've not gone to work for 2 weeks. There's no money in my bank account. I'm not getting any inbound emails. I've just took my foot off the ball completely. It's like worst case scenario. Like, what would happen then? You'd figure it out.
It's so unknown to me.
You would literally figure it out the way you figured out everything else. It's like people say to me, are you not scared? Because my partner works for my business and we have a young son. We live in Sweden. We don't have any support system. We both come from very working class backgrounds. There's no inheritance waiting in the wings. And all our eggs are in this business's basket. You know, it's like, this is our son's future. This is how we make our livelihood. And folk will say that's just terrifying. Like, what if it doesn't work? What if it all goes horribly wrong? And I've gotten to a place now in my entrepreneurship journey where I think if that happens, I'll just build something else.
Yeah.
And I know that it would work and it would be a success of some shape and kind because I've done it so many times and because I trust myself. I trust my skills and my abilities. And you're the same. It's like, what would the worst case scenario be? And when you really deeply believe that you would be okay in that worst case scenario, then it's not a fear anymore. That it's not a worry anymore. Because why would it be? You would figure it out.
It's like another quote that comes to mind. I hope I don't butcher it, but there's that quote about the bird on the branch. Does this ring any bells? Oh, no, I was hoping you'd save me on that one. It's something about how like the bird doesn't fear the branch breaking from underneath.
Never heard it. Sounds good though.
So it's like the bird doesn't fear the branch from breaking beneath its feet because it trusts its wings to fly. Something
beautiful.
Those lines.
That's what I mean.
That's what it is.
I'll have to look it up and borrow that for next time.
Interesting. I love how this is like semi-conversation around confidence versus, therapy all kind of mixed in here. I'm sure your bond sessions, they must be so therapeutic. Must be so emotional. I can really imagine. So thank you for giving me a bit of a taste of that. I've obviously got so many other questions I want to ask you. One of the other things I wanted to ask, we mentioned about sort of the systemic issue, especially bringing it back to like confidence in women in particular. I loved your quote. I'm checking my notes here so I do get this one right. the problem is not that women aren't confident. It's that confidence in women is not rewarded. They have a rational, valid reaction to a system that is penalising their confidence. So I would love for you to expand on that.
Yes, and it's a very intentional strapline that I use a lot in my keynotes and in my lectures, because especially now, bear in mind I've been doing this upfront work for 10 years. 10 years ago, we were not talking about confidence the way we are now. We definitely weren't talking about it from a systemic intersectional perspective. And that is one of the reasons that I built Upfront and saw a huge gap to create something like Upfront 10 years ago, because all of the conversation around confidence, the products and the webinars and the training, most of them were built by men. And they were preaching this kind of fake it till you make it, power pose, business suits model of confidence. And then on the other side, you had kind of body, breath, vibrations, crystals, which I think both of them are not fit for purpose. We need something rooted in science and rooted in reality. And the reality is that we live in a world where 90% of people have a negativity bias towards women. And that is a statistic from the United Nations most recent gender report.
Is that just general? Like,
yeah,
even outside of the workplace?
Yeah,
like
all people.
What?
Yeah, it's a very scary statistic, and it's one that underpins how we've designed the bonds, because you can't talk about confidence in isolation from that. It's like you can't confidence your way out of oppression. You can't confidence your way out of that bias. So when we look at confidence in that context, yes, it's about you as an individual, your agency, your power, the control and influence that you do have, but it's also about your role in the system that you're part of, the teams that you lead, the family that you look after, the friendship groups you're part of, community groups, political groups, whatever that looks like. How are you using your confidence to build the collective confidence of the women and girls around you, so that future generations are not having conversations about confidence anymore? Yeah. So obviously the workplace is one of the most relatable and extreme examples of this. So what we see at work is women being punished for having confidence in a way that white men, who are often incompetent and mediocre, get praised for showing confidence. Women of colour are often penalised and punished for having too much confidence. And white women are continually told that we're doing confidence wrong. So you're either too confident or not confident enough. And usually when I'm in theatres, I'll say, raise your hands if you've ever been told you're either too confident or not confident enough. Every hand goes up. Then I say, raise your hand if you've been told you're both. And most hands go up. And that's a really good example of what academics call the double bind. So we are told to be more confident, and then when we display those confident behaviours, we're told to tone it down. We're told not that much, to go back in your box. So Upfront is hopefully changing the conversation. That's why we talk about starting a confidence revolution, to help women understand this. It's not you. It's not your confidence. This is a systemic issue. And one of the reasons it happens is we have such a narrow, fixed idea of what confidence is. And we are fed that story from when we're little. Confidence is usually masculine. It's usually very loud and extroverted. It's often American. And, I say this as your favourite Scottish extrovert friend. We live in a world that rewards extroversion, and it is not good for any of us. So if you don't fit that really narrow box, you get feedback really early in your life that you're doing it wrong and that confidence is not something that's going to get you anywhere. So my version of that story, I was a very confident little girl, as most of us all were. Like I always say, we are all born with all of the confidence and the creativity that we need in the world, and then someone or something takes it away. And for me, that was learning that, knowing the answers, putting my hand up did not make me popular. Other girls did not like that. And I remember my teachers saying to my parents at parents' night, she's pretending she doesn't know the answer.
Wow.
And a question I would love to your listeners to think about is like, when what age were you when you started to hide your cleverness? Because every woman has an answer to that question. And I think I was probably 7.
Wow, so young. Shrinking ourselves, literally making ourselves less visible. So a couple of things. One is I love the plot twist that I guess like the bonders, what's revealed to them when they join, which is this whole mission and impact all around confidence, and you're like, welcome to the club. This isn't actually about making you more confident. This is a systemic global issue. This isn't your fault. So I love that immediate. It's almost like you bought the book or you bought the ticket to see the film and you're like, wait, what? And you're like immediately like, wait, what's all this about? The other thing that comes up for me is I must be part of the 10% with that crazy statistic you shared, the UN with the negative bias. And I would guess one of the biggest reasons for that is because I grew up in a matriarchal household, which makes me wonder, what kind of household did you grow up in? What were your parents like?
So I grew up in quite a traditional male-female partnership. My mum and dad are both closet artists. They're both very, very creative. My mum is also very entrepreneurial, and I had a brother. I think the context for me was more my school and where I grew up, in a place called Ayrshire in Scotland, which is, one of the most impoverished parts of the UK. So at school there was a lot of, I think particularly in the west coast of Scotland, and I'd be so curious to hear from your Scottish listeners, but there's a really intense culture of who does she think she is?
Yeah.
And it's the tall poppy thing to an extreme.
Yeah.
So it's like everybody has to know their place and stay in their box. And I'm just not that type of person. Whether it was my red duffel coat that I wore when I was a teenager, I enjoyed performing. I wanted to be on stage. That just did not go down well.
Yeah.
And I was both subtly and very explicitly given a message of, this is not welcome here, to the point where I once had a friend of my parents suggest that I tone down the red if I ever wanted to get a boyfriend.
Wow. These idiots. Apologies to your relative, but, it kind of links back a little bit to my question before on, overcoming other people's perceptions. And it's like, if you do stop and really think about it and you're like, the classic, like they, them, and you're like, who are they anyway? You stop and you think, you're like, to your point on like whose opinion matters, but also like, what are they doing? It's like, are they lurking on the sidelines? Are they a spectator of the sport? Like, I'm a player on the field, move on. I think what you touched on there as well was also anthropological and so powerful is the groups in which we belong as well, right? And so your story of growing up in Ayrshire, how can you give any advice for anyone who might feel like they're surrounded by friends, family, loved ones who they love, they don't want to cut them off, but there's maybe that they hate to admit it to themselves, but there's maybe that sense of like, I'm outgrowing this group. And again, it's that sort of fear of leaving the group. It's like death, I'm leaving the tribe. But sometimes you do have to put yourself in that situation. What advice can you give to that?
I think it's so important because we don't talk enough about the grief that comes with that.
Right.
And for me, entrepreneurship, leadership, building businesses, publishing books, like I don't have hundreds of friends who are doing those things.
Yeah.
Because there are not hundreds of women in the world doing those things, period.
Yeah.
Never mind women who I have access to, who I've built friendships and relationships with. And it's something that it's a very kind of present thing that I'm working through. And something that came to me last night, so I had the launch of my children's book in London, as you know.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it was such a huge day and I was full of adrenaline. My partner and my son were in the hotel room asleep and I was like wandering around London with my notepad and my headphones in thinking, gosh, this is like, how do you even start to process it? And there was a bit of me that could feel myself slipping into sadness of being like, I'm by myself. I would have loved to have friends around me at this moment. Nobody's organised a dinner for, you kind of go into this like, oh, nobody. And then I realised I kind of sat with it, and it's like, it's not that it's sad, it's just singular. Nobody else in the world, even some of my closest friends who love me with all their heart, do not know the 3-year journey that it has taken me to get that book to the stage where we launched it in London in front and full of a room of 70 people. They just can't know because they weren't on that journey. I'm the only person who can sit with that, the aftermath of what that feels like. And so it's, the grief thing. So I think it's about recognizing when you grow, when you invest in yourself, when you make decisions that are not always comfortable and familiar. There will be people who will be, and it comes back to what we talked about earlier, there will be people who are upset by that. And that is a very inevitable part of it. So the first thing you have to do is really trust yourself that that'll be okay, and that you'll be able to deal with that, and that it's not about cutting everybody off and, you know, never speaking to your family and friends again. But you'll figure it out and you'll find a way. Maybe not with all of them, but for the ones that really matter, you'll find a way. The second thing I want your listeners to think about is there are so many people in the world who will be your biggest cheerleaders and champions. They will be leaving you voice notes at midnight. They will be pre-ordering your book in bulk. They will be bringing homemade lasagna to your door for your kids because you've been up all night pitching. Those people are just waiting to meet you.
Aww.
There's so many of them. And I get a bit emotional when I think about it, because I'm like, I've not met so many of these people yet. And we're going to have so much fun in the future. And they're going to support me so much. And I don't even know they exist. And that is a kind of vision that I connect with when I feel, because it is isolating. Entrepreneurship is lonely. Being a leader is lonely. And that's why support groups, communities like the Bond are so, so important. But I always think, imagine those future cheerleaders who haven't even met you yet. That's going to be amazing.
That's such a nice thought. I've never heard that before, of like the people you haven't met yet. How exciting. That's so, and I can feel
cheer for you so loud.
I can feel your energy even as you're saying it. You mentioned the Bond as well. Let's segue onto that because I keep sort of teasing it. So tell my audience, what is the Bond? What is it all about? What does it look like? What is it exactly?
So Bond is the collective noun for a group of women. And so our flagship product is called The Bond, and it is a 6-week online learning experience that transforms your relationship with your confidence and the confidence of the women around you. We have had over 15,000 women from 24 time zones graduate from a Bond so far. The Bond is scalable across time zones and geographies, which is why organisations love the Bond and bring lots of their teams into the Bonds. And for individuals, you're joining a Bond to join the confidence revolution. You're joining a 6-week program that is made up of pre-recorded content. There's a course. So the course is based on all of the leading academic research around self-efficacy and self-advocacy. Then every week we have a live call with an expert that's like a TED Talks, very high energy and educational. And then there's the community piece where there's lots of peer-to-peer learning, offline meetups, our upfront and centre conference. And then you have 12 months access to the Bond course, the curriculum and the community. And so they happen 4 times a year. And we also host Bonds for different topics. So obviously the confidence one is the one that's most well known and the one that kind of links to the theme we've talked about today. We also have a leadership Bond. We have a Taylor Swift strategy Bond.
Nice. What's that one about?
So that is for
building your empire.
Entrepreneurs and creatives who want to learn from the business lessons from how Taylor Swift has built
That's amazing.
brand that she's built.
That's so cool.
Because I think there's lots of stories and information out there about her art, but nobody is studying and distilling the business decisions that she's making.
Wow.
And I think how she builds brands, how she serves her customers, how she builds community, her personal brand building, there is so much we can all learn from how she's doing that. And I'm a huge Swiftie. So I was like, I really want to build this. It's like, instead of write the book you want to read. I was like, I'm going to make the course.
That's incredible.
I want to be part of.
I love it. And just goes to show, right, how the rest of the world views Taylor Swift. She's a song who writes.
She's an entrepreneur.
She's the singer who writes these songs about her breakups. Similar to Reese Witherspoon.
Yes, exactly.
Incredible case study with how successful she is.
Commercially minded.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Amazing.
We also have a boys bond, which is for mums and young boys. Nice. And we're building out bonds in lots of different verticals. But the confidence bond is our most famous one. And we have incredible data and stories. Like this morning, I met Laura Pacey, who's just joined UPFRONT's advisory council. So she did bond 9. So every year we have public bonds, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well, so bond 10 kicks off on the 3rd of November. So we'll probably be in week 2 when this comes out in the world. Bond 11 will be in 2026. Now, Laura did bond 9 because she was made redundant. Confidence through the floor, just wasn't in a good place. Found UPFRONT, came across bond 9, did the programme. She graduated from the bond and applied for a job and is now in her very first C-suite position.
Wow.
And that is a very common story, right through to Donna Patterson, who joined the bond when she was on maternity leave. At the time, she was working for Morrison's, who she believed had discriminated against her because she was pregnant. And due to the support of the bond and lots of other brilliant communities in her life, she decided to take Morrison's to court single-handedly. She could not afford a lawyer, so she did it by herself, using a lot of the techniques that we teach in the bond around owning the room and speaking in a way that gets people to listen. And she won. She took Morrison's to court and won. Right through to bonders who start businesses, leave relationships.
Incredible. That
the average
amazing.
Salary increase is 49%
wow.
for a bonder.
Okay, if that hasn't sold it to you already, then so I'm not sure exactly when this is going out. If it does go out before 3rd of November, then there is time if you want to check it out. We'll be popping the links and everything in the show notes. If not, sign up to the next one. You mentioned these incredible case studies. What wonderful success stories. I do want to, our final sort of chunk of this interview, I do want to kind of deep dive a bit more into the entrepreneurial side of things. So you mentioned you have got entrepreneurs who go through the program. We talked about, forging your own path and how lonely that can be. I just want to read out another statistic here. Up to £250 billion could be added to the UK economy if women started and scaled their businesses at the same rate as men. So obviously there's loads of problems when it comes to access to finance, unconscious bias, the list goes on and on. But connecting again to the confidence piece, what advice can you give to, let's say, if there is a budding female entrepreneur that's listening, she probably isn't even calling herself an entrepreneur, right? Like even that label is like, that's not.
I know, I did that.
Right?
Like, other people can call me that, but I can't call
Yeah. Exactly. Like, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not a founder. And especially if you haven't had your first taste of it, but you do have that itch. And there's like, I could do this. And especially now with social media and the internet. Can you give any more advice we haven't already touched on to help them take the leap? Because full circle back to what you said at the very beginning around the tragedy of all of these ideas and potential businesses and products and services that don't make it out there into the real world because of how confidence has blocked you.
So I think for the people who are listening who are in that position, we need to stop thinking about, I'm either in a job doing what I'm doing now, or I'm a founder, or I'm an entrepreneur. Like that, those are not the two choices. It's not as binary as that. As you say, especially because of the internet. We can do a very slow merge of those two worlds. We can take baby steps, little pigeon steps. We can find what those micro confidence reps are so that it feels manageable and doable. I think the reason that your listeners are not doing it is because that gap's just too huge. It's like, what? How would I even? What? But no, thank you. So the one way that I always tell folks to think about starting that journey is to work in the open. Be visible. Show yourself and your work to the world. What does that mean? That means that you are showing up normally online, not always. There are ways to do this in person in your own communities, of course, but online is going to be the most effective, impactful way to do that, is to get used to saying what you think, having ideas and opinions online. So, for example, say you are an employment lawyer by day and you have got an idea for a tech startup that is going to streamline part of the legal process. You can start to talk about that online through one LinkedIn post. And the post might say, I've been thinking about how we might solve the problem XYZ. What do you think? Do you know anybody else who solves that problem? Because that's the first thing I think. You're also operating from a place of this idea you've got doesn't exist. It probably does in a different shape or form. So your first job is to find those people, take them for coffee, have conversations, figure out what's working and what's not working about their business. So I would start to see it as what's the tiny step that you can take rather than making this huge big leap. You are never ever going to wake up one day and say, that's it, I'm ready to hand in my notice, I'm ready to start a business. Most businesses start by accident. Most businesses start very, very scrappy. Another question I would pose to you is, what is the quickest, cheapest way you can prove to yourself that it's a shit idea so you can move on with your life, so you can move on to your next idea? Maybe you make a holding page. Maybe you do a poll on LinkedIn. Maybe the next time you're in a taxi and they say, what do? You tell them that you're the CEO of this new company and see what their reaction is.
I love that.
Product that you're selling.
I love that. You don't even know them. It's a stranger practice.
It's really low risk, low stakes environments. Because I think that's also, for me, so much of this is about our relationship with our own identity and the stories we tell ourselves. And I think we see this a lot with writing and creating art, building businesses. Like, I'm not a founder. I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not a writer. I just write on LinkedIn every day. I'm not really a writer. If you write, you are a writer. If you are building something, you are founding something, you are a creator. The stories you tell yourself, especially in those early days, really, really matter. And it is a journey that I've been on. As we said, like, I used to cringe at the idea of being called an entrepreneur, would never have called myself an entrepreneur. And I don't even know where that came from. I think because my education, my self-education was, it was Richard Branson, James Dyson, Steve Jobs. These were the books I was reading. These were the role models that I had at the time.
Right.
I mean, obviously, I don't relate to any of those men.
Yeah.
And I wonder, how my journey would have changed if I'd had access to women building businesses and women with backgrounds like mine building businesses. I think the other thing is you just need to get over yourself. And I say that with all the love in my heart. It's like nobody is really watching that closely.
Right.
You don't really matter that much. Try the thing, do the thing. It might work, it might not work, but you will never know if you don't try. And I'll be damned if you want to be one of those people on your deathbed who didn't try the thing.
Yeah,
right? You have to try.
Yeah, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. 100%. Oh, I love it. The weight that we just given other people. And the other thing that comes to mind there is like, good news, this is not a big deal. Like bad news, this is not a big deal. Good news, it's not a big deal. Given that you are so much further along, and not putting you on a pedestal, but this is your sixth business, you are a serial entrepreneur, Lauren. Any other tips that you can give, I guess, like, before we wrap, can you share sort of your top pearls of wisdom as it relates to, again, in keeping with the entrepreneurial theme on like finding product market fit, growth? I read that you hit the 1 million milestone in 23 months. So congratulations. Share your simple 8 steps.
Yes, download my PDF.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think the first thing, and we've kind of touched on it, is bias towards action. So anybody who knows me or has ever spent any time with me, I am intensely driven by doing the thing. This book is a really great example. It took me 3 years. It was supposed to take me 1 year. But I am like a dog with a bone. Like I see it through to execution every single time. And I think part of that is my education. I went to art school and to study product design. And when you study product design, you are rewarded for how many shitty prototypes you can make.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned in my early 20s to make scrappy models, scrappy sketches. How can we, let's go show it somebody at the bus stop. What do you think of this idea? So that's how I approach everything. How I design my company, how we run meetings, what our policies are, how I show up online, Instagram posts, LinkedIn posts, and also how I built our product. You know, I'm here now telling a very compelling story about the bond, how it works, where it came from, why it's called a bond. At the start, it was a course. There was a Facebook group and 20 videos uploaded to a drive. And 300 people paid for that. And it wasn't called a bond then. And that was 4 years ago. And every single bond gets better and better because of the second point. So number one, bias towards action. Second is obsession with customer feedback. I am constantly shook at how many suppliers I engage with who never ask me for feedback.
Yeah, same.
What is that?
Nobody does.
It's insane to me. It's like anything I do when someone pays me to deliver a service, which would usually be a keynote of some sort, I will always ask for feedback.
Same.
Of course, the products that my business sell, where we have thousands of customers using these products, we have a really robust feedback framework, and we read every single point and we take action on the things that need to be better. We reach out and ask for more information if we want or need it. And we also double down on the things that people love and things that are really great and things that matter to people. Because people hear feedback and think it's like, oh, tell me how bad. Feedback's also about what is it you really love about this thing? Because that's the thing that I'm then going to put on the homepage.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I can't guess what... And the speech I gave in Edinburgh last week, when people said, oh, it's so great, and I kept saying, what was your favourite bit?
Exactly.
And it wasn't the part that I had guessed. And I often go around at the end and look at people's notebooks. What's the bit that they've written down?
Or when they'll take out their phones.
Exactly.
And the bit they take pictures.
Because that's the bit that I'll lead with next time.
Exactly.
So
I asked the exact same question with the show. Yeah. Whenever anyone's like, I listen to it, I'm like, what was your favourite bit?
Yeah.
So that's good. That's validating for me.
So always asking for feedback. And then I think the third thing is really engaging with money, making money, spending money, investing in yourself, investing in your team, being comfortable with losing money. Again, a journey I'm still on, but I meet a lot of entrepreneurs who are still, I don't know if it's going to make any money, don't pay myself. If you don't pay yourself, you don't have a business. You just have an expensive hobby, right? It's like you need to figure out how to make it work. And if you're not paying yourself, it's like, what's the plan? Okay, I can afford to not be paid for 10 months. At the 10-month mark, I know that I need to be paid X to pay my bills. When are we going to check in on that? What does that look like? You know, being really comfortable with saying how much your product is. Again, often I'm shopping around for services, photographers, social media support. Can I find how much it is? Put it there, front and centre. It's like if you want to join a bond, it is £749 or £125 for 6 months. That's how much it costs. If you want to buy my children's book, it's £10.99. I would love you to buy all of those things. Like, get comfortable with owning how much your product costs, what the business model is. And again, it's linked back to all the things we've talked about. Women are culturally conditioned to feel uncomfortable around conversations about money.
Just thinking exactly that. I was going to dive into that as well. Yeah.
The status quo wants to keep us poor because when women have money, we create economic power. And when we have economic power, we can build businesses, we can invest in each other, we can hire each other, we can pay each other. Like, that's what motivates me. But the powers that be, of course, don't want that to happen because the current state of things is what's serving them. So again, please don't feel embarrassed or ashamed or, oh shit, I've got so far to go, because we live in a world that has a 90% negativity bias towards women. There is a reason that these things are difficult. The system is working exactly as it's designed to. And that is not to reinforce negative stereotypes or, to bring out my tiny violin. I actually find it very liberating and motivating.
Yeah.
Because once you have that knowledge, then you can go about trying to fix it and make it better, which
and blame
is
yourself
exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, you don't kind of blame yourself for it. Lauren, incredible. You making me think about, everything that exists on the other side of fear, right? It's like all of whether it's that fear of getting familiar with your money, talking about sharing your prices, taking that leap, those micro reps. I love it. Lauren, is there anything I haven't already asked you that you would like to talk about before we finish here?
Can I talk about my new book?
Yeah, of course. Congratulations.
Thank you. So my children's book is called Taylor Meets the Trick, and it is written for 3 to 8-year-olds. And it is all about teaching young people about the patriarchy in a very fun, easy, gentle, kind way. The story is inspired by my little boy who's got long blonde curly hair. People often think he's a girl. And the trick has become such a incredible tool as language for our family to talk about these moments that doesn't make anybody feel shame or embarrassed. So I'll give you 2 examples that happened at the launch yesterday, which just blew me away. Given that I've literally just written this book and I've been talking and working on the trick for 5 years. One of our speakers, Lee, an incredible guy called Lee Chambers, who is from the Male Ally Institute, turned up to the event to speak on the panel in running gear, like joggies and a jumper. And I met him at the door and I thought, kind of noticed, but had no emotional response to that noticing. It wasn't until he was on the stage that he shared with us that he'd left his suitcase on the train.
Oh, no.
And he had no clothes, and so he had to turn up in very casual joggies and a jumper. And then he said, and the fact that none of you have really noticed, but yet had any of the women on this stage turned up like that, you would have all noticed. And that's the trick. And I was like, I was tricked. So that was a funny moment.
The double standard. And not only that, but all the connotations of like, what a slob, lazy, doesn't care, like all these other things that we would put on.
Then at the end of the event, so I had bought really beautiful bouquets of flowers to have around the venue. And at the end, there was hardly anybody left. Everybody had gone home. We're packing all the stuff up. And I thought, gosh, these gorgeous flowers, I don't want them. They'll just go to waste in the venue. And so I ran round the room saying, would you like to take these lovely flowers home? And I only asked women. I was tricked. I was tricked. So it's these moments where, the trick is making you think there's rules for boys and rules for girls. Grown-ups call it the patriarchy. Children call it the trick. In the book, the teacher is tricked because the teacher thinks that Taylor is a girl, and the daddy has to educate the teacher and Taylor that there's this thing called the patriarchy. In the story, it's a little black squiggle that sits on your shoulder, and it's really sneaky and jumps into your tummy and jumps into your heart. And at the back of the book, there's lots of resources for parents and families. And really, this is for grown-ups. This is for mums and dads, aunties and uncles, grannies and granddads who want to build a better future for all of us. So go to thetrick.co. You can also get it on Amazon. Would really love you to get a copy if you have any little people in your life.
We'll put the links in the show notes. Lauren, congratulations. Thank you so much. I have to ask, given I've recently discovered that you're a Swiftie, the long blonde curly hair, the Taylor, any connection?
Of course.
Wow, you are a Swiftie.
Of course.
She named your son. Good job she's got an androgynous name, right?
So we did this, so obviously the way that the little boy looks, my son's got long blonde curly hair. He's called Atlas. He's not called Taylor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But we chose Taylor because Taylor Swift and because it's a gender neutral name. But because Taylor's so famous, we're probably going to lean to think that's a girl.
Yeah, makes sense.
Which makes you tricked in the story. Right. And that's why we gave him a guitar. Mastermind, that's what I would say.
Very savvy. Lauren, thank you so much for coming
Steph.
on Strategy and Tragedy. An absolute pleasure. And thank you so much for listening. I really hope you've enjoyed this episode. And more importantly, I hope you're feeling a boost of confidence. I hope that you are leaving this episode feeling ready to take a micro rep, to take a small action to build your own self-confidence. Thank you so much. Episodes are weekly, and I hope to see you next time.